There's a brutal truth about discipline that no one wants to admit. You're not supposed to feel ready. You're not supposed to feel motivated. You're not supposed to wait for the perfect mood, energy, or timing, because none of that is coming. Discipline isn't about what you want to do, it's about what you do anyway. And the people who win in life, they don't negotiate with their feelings, they force themselves into action. This podcast isn't here to inspire you into a good mood. It's here to confront you, to break the cycle of excuses, indecision, decision, and delayed ambition. If you've ever wondered why you start strong and fade, why you set goals but never sustain the habits, why motivation is never enough, you're about to learn the difference between wanting discipline and enforcing it. Because the version of you that succeeds, that version is built with force, structure, and non-negotiable standards. Most people don't fail because they lack ambition. They fail because they wait. They wait for a moment that feels right. A day when their energy is high, when their mind is clear, when stress is gone, when inspiration hits. But that day almost never comes. And when it does, it doesn't stay long enough to build anything meaningful. Discipline, real discipline, begins when you stop expecting your emotions to cooperate. You've been conditioned to believe motivation is what starts your journey, but look closely at your own life. How many times were you motivated and still didn't follow through? How many times did you swear tomorrow would be different, only to repeat the same patterns? Motivation is a spark, but you can't build a life around sparks. You build around structure, around force, around non-negotiable action that doesn't depend on mood. Discipline isn't a mood. It's a muscle, and most people's mental muscles are weak, atrophied by years of negotiating with comfort. You tell yourself, I'll start when I feel more awake, or I'll get serious once things calm down, or I'll push harder when I'm in the right mindset. But life rarely calms down. The right mindset arrives after action, not before it. The energy you're waiting for is produced by momentum, not by wishing. There's a version of you that exists only on the other side of pressure. You don't unlock that version by hoping. You unlock it by forcing your current self into situations that demand strength. Think about the areas in your life where you've grown the most. Were those moments comfortable? Did they arrive at the perfect time? Or did you step into them before you felt ready, then adapt out of necessity? Readiness is a lie your brain tells you to protect you from discomfort. Your mind is naturally wired to conserve energy. It will always choose the easiest path unless you override it. That override is discipline. Discipline says, I don't care how I feel, I care what I do. And the identity shift begins when you act in conflict with your emotions instead of in obedience to them. Every time you obey your feelings, you strengthen the part of you that loses. Every time you act in spite of them, you strengthen the part that wins. And this is where people misunderstand the nature of change. They think change begins with clarity, enlightenment, or inspiration. In reality, change begins with confrontation. You must confront the truth. You're not undisciplined because you're incapable. You're undisciplined because you're still negotiating with comfort. Let's strip it down. The gym doesn't care how tired you are. Your goals don't care how stressed you feel. The deadlines you keep pushing don't pause because your motivation dipped. Life is moving with or without your emotional permission, and if you don't take control of your actions, your feelings will hijack them. You've probably said, I know what I need to do, I just don't do it. That sentence is a confession that you're driven by impulse instead of discipline. Knowing is useless without enforcement. People love planning but avoid pushing. They love setting intentions but run from implementation. They collect tips and strategies but fail to apply them consistently, not because they don't have the knowledge, but because they've never trained themselves to act regardless of resistance. Here's the part most won't admit. Being disciplined will always feel unnatural at first. There is no version of early discipline that feels smooth or comfortable. You will resist, mentally and physically. Your body will search for excuses. Your thoughts will bargain for delay. Your habits will cling to what's familiar. But discipline requires rebellion. Rebellion against your weaker instincts. Think about a cold shower. Your brain screams no before you even step in. But once you're under the water, your body adjusts. It's not the water that changed, it's you. Your threshold for discomfort increased because you exposed yourself to it. That's how discipline is born, not through inspiration, but through repeated exposure to resistance. If you wait until action feels easy, you'll never act. If you wait to feel brave before confronting your weaknesses, those weaknesses will own you. If you wait for the mood to write, to build, to train, to study, to create, you'll never build consistency. The cost of waiting is your potential, taxed daily by hesitation. Discipline is the art of acting without the approval of your emotions. It's not about removing doubt, it's about acting while doubt exists. It's not about eliminating fear, it's about moving while afraid. People think discipline means certainty, confidence, and willpower. But confidence comes after execution, not before. Willpower fades, structure endures, and certainty is a luxury earned by consistent action, not a prerequisite for it. You've glorified motivation for too long. Motivation is loud and exciting. Discipline is quiet and unromantic. Motivation says, I feel like it. Discipline says, do it anyway. Those three words, do it anyway, are the backbone of every successful person you admire. Not because they're superhuman, but because they stopped giving their feelings a vote. Let's get brutally honest. Most of your life is designed around comfort. Your morning routine, your work habits, your nutrition, your bedtime, your entertainment, it's all centered on convenience and ease. You rarely place yourself in environments that require grit. And when life does throw you into them, you scramble because you've never trained for pressure. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's mundane, repetitive, uncomfortable. It's waking up when you'd rather snooze. It's working when you'd rather scroll. It's finishing when you'd rather quit. It's following a standard that your emotions didn't choose. And over time, as you act in conflict with your moods, you rewire your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries, and start seeing yourself as someone who does. Here's a hard truth. Successful people don't love discipline itself. They love what discipline creates. Athletes don't wake up thrilled to train daily. Writers don't always feel like writing. Business owners don't always feel like leading, planning, or executing. But they force themselves through resistance because the cost of not acting is too high. You don't become disciplined by wanting to be disciplined. You become disciplined by repeatedly acting against your own resistance until resistance loses power. The first reps are the hardest, just like in the gym. But what happens after weeks of training? The same exercises that once seemed impossible become tolerable, even easy. Not because the weight changed, but because you did. You must treat discipline like a non-negotiable contract. Not a wish, not a goal. A contract. You decide the actions, the standards, the boundaries, and then you enforce them with zero emotion. You don't wait for the perfect time because time is never perfect. You don't wait for ideal conditions because conditions are never ideal. You don't wait to feel ready because readiness is created through action. There is no growth without force. You have to force yourself to get up earlier, force yourself to finish tasks, force yourself into uncomfortable routines. Force yourself to stay consistent when the excitement fades. People who avoid force stay stuck. People who embrace it evolve. And this is where your life begins to change. The moment you stop arguing with the work, the moment you stop narrating your feelings, the moment you stop rationalizing delay, discipline is built the way a callus is built, through friction, through repetition, through irritation. But once it's there, life gets easier. Not because challenges disappear, but because you've toughened the part of you that deals with them. Your future is not decided by the intensity of your motivation, it is decided by the strictness of your standards. When you stop waiting for permission from your emotions, you become dangerous. Because most people spend their entire lives reacting to how they feel, instead of directing what they do. This section is the foundation. Stop expecting to feel ready. Replace the question, do I feel like it, with, is it required of me? And if the answer is yes, you act. That shift alone separates those who dream from those who execute. The fastest way to destroy procrastination is to remove your feelings from the decision-making process. Your emotions are not qualified to run your life. They're impulsive, inconsistent, and easily manipulated by fatigue, stress, and distractions. But standards are stable. Standards don't shift when you're tired. Standards don't lower because you're overwhelmed. Standards don't disappear because your mood dipped. Think about soldiers. They don't train when they feel inspired. They train because it's required. Their performance in the field doesn't depend on how motivated they are that day. It depends on repetition, conditioning, discipline. They don't rely on preference. They rely on enforcement. They don't ask, "Do I want to do this?" They execute because their identity is tied to responsibility, not emotion. You don't need to become militant, but you do need to adopt that mindset in your own world. If it's required of you, it gets done. End of discussion. The weaker part of your brain will always argue for comfort, always rationalize inaction, always present emotional evidence for delay. But the stronger part of you, the part that's tired of being stuck, must become louder. Let's break down why people stay trapped in undisciplined cycles. It's not a lack of knowledge. Almost everyone knows what they should do. The disconnect is between intention and enforcement. You tell yourself, "I'll go to the gym tomorrow," but there's no penalty for skipping. You think, "I'll start waking up early," but when you hit snooze, nothing forces you up. You plan to work on your goals at night, but when Netflix autoplays the next episode, you surrender. Not because you're weak, but because nothing in your life enforces consequence. Humans respond to structure, to accountability, to boundaries. When there is no structure, feelings rule. When there is no accountability, excuses multiply. When there are no boundaries, distractions invade. You don't need more motivation, you need systems that remove the option to slack. Consider this. If someone followed you around for 30 days and fined you every time you broke your own commitment, you'd instantly become more disciplined. Not because you suddenly care more, but because consequence forces action. Right now, your only consequence is guilt, and you've learned to live with it. The undisciplined version of you is comfortable being disappointed in yourself. You've experienced the pain of regret so many times that it's become familiar, even tolerable. That's dangerous, because the moment you normalize self-disappointment, you become numb to your own potential. You need to raise the price of inaction. If failing to act feels the same as acting, you'll always choose the easier path. The difference between disciplined people and undisciplined people is not that disciplined people enjoy the challenge. It's that they've created a life where not doing the work is more painful than doing it. Think about someone who wakes up at 4 a.m. daily to train. Most of them don't wake up excited. But they've built a life, a standard, a responsibility that makes staying in bed emotionally expensive. They've conditioned their brain to associate comfort with regret and movement with self-respect. If your life allows you to escape responsibility whenever you're uncomfortable, you've set the wrong system. You must build a structure that holds you accountable even when your emotions rebel. And let's address another trap. People think discipline is about going from zero to extreme overnight. They try to wake up 5 hours earlier, overhaul their diet instantly, train like an athlete, read 3 books a week, and cut off all distractions, all at once. Then, when they crash, they blame themselves instead of blaming the unrealistic overhaul. Discipline is not built through intensity. It's built through consistency. You don't need to change everything at once. You need to enforce one standard at a time until your brain stops negotiating in that area. Then you move to the next one. If you try to rewire your entire life overnight, your emotions will revolt and you'll return to old habits. Start with one rule. Maybe it's I wake up at 6 a.m. no matter what, or I don't eat after 8 p.m., or I write for 30 minutes every day, or I go to the gym Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The rule doesn't need to be extreme, it needs to be enforced. Once your brain stops questioning it, discipline has been installed in that lane. Now you add another. And here's the thing most people don't understand. Discipline gets easier once it becomes identity. At first, forcing yourself to do something feels like a war. But after months of doing it, it stops being an argument. There is no voice asking, "Should I?" or "Do I feel like it?" The action becomes automatic. That's the stage where you become dangerous because 90% of the world never reaches the point where discipline becomes identity. They hover in the cycle of start, fade, restart, never pushing long enough to let the identity lock in. But let's go deeper. Why do people stop before identity forms? The answer is emotional withdrawal. The moment you remove a habit that used to comfort you, scrolling, snacking, sleeping late, gaming, partying, avoiding work, your brain panics. It will convince you that you're being deprived, that the discomfort isn't worth it, that you're losing rather than gaining. That's the withdrawal phase. It's temporary, but most people treat it like a stop sign instead of a tunnel you push through. If you can outlast the withdrawal period of change, you reach the phase where new habits become less painful than old ones. But that requires force, not inspiration, force. Let's call out another lie. I just need better time management. No, you don't. You need better self-management. Time is not your problem. Discipline is. You don't need more hours. You need higher standards for the hours you already have. You don't need another planner. You need to stop spending prime energy on low-value habits. You don't need reminders. You need enforcement. There's a reason your goals feel far away. You've made them optional. And anything optional eventually gets postponed. Discipline is built by making the essential non-negotiable. You don't brush your teeth because you're motivated. You brush them because it's a non-negotiable standard. If you treated your goals the same way you treat hygiene, your life would change in 6 months. Most people think their problem is procrastination. But procrastination is a symptom. The root cause is comfort addiction. You've spent years giving in to ease, numbing pressure with distraction, escaping hard tasks with entertainment. Your brain has learned that resistance equals avoidance. You don't need hacks to beat procrastination. You need to stop allowing your emotions to override responsibility. Look at anyone you admire for their results. They didn't become disciplined by accident. They forced themselves through boredom, fatigue, fear, self-doubt, and distraction. Not once, but repeatedly. The reps you don't feel like doing are the reps that hardwire identity. Imagine what your life would look like if, for the next 12 months, you acted without waiting to feel like it. If you enforced effort over emotion, if you made action the default, not an option. Most people will never experience that version of themselves because the attachment to comfort is stronger than the desire for transformation. The question is, which part of you will win? The emotional self or the disciplined self? The part that seeks comfort or the part that seeks progress? You can't have both. At some point, one identity consumes the other, and understand this, the world doesn't reward potential. It rewards execution. No one claps for the person who almost did something. No one respects the person who always plans but never produces. Your dreams don't care that you're tired. Your goals don't care that you're stressed. Your future doesn't care that you're scared. Discipline requires you to care more about execution than excuses. The transformation begins the moment you stop believing your own rationalizations. I'll start later is not a delay. It's a decision to stay the same. I'm not in the mood is a confession that your emotions run your life. I'll wait until it feels right is a strategy for stagnation. You must build a life where your standards are louder than your feelings, where your commitments are stronger than your moods, where your identity is anchored in action, not intention. If you want to change your life, stop trying to feel disciplined and start forcing discipline until it becomes who you are. Discipline isn't just about forcing yourself to act. It's about engineering your life so that action becomes the default and not the decision. The reason most people fail isn't that they're weak. It's that their environment is built for comfort, not structure. You cannot rely on willpower alone when everything around you is designed to distract, delay, and derail you. If your phone is always within reach, if your notifications are constantly on, if your workspace is cluttered, if your time is unplanned, if your bed is the first thing you see in the morning, you're already losing the battle before it begins. Discipline becomes 10 times harder when temptation is accessible. You don't need to be stronger than temptation, you need to remove it. Look at people who seem naturally disciplined. They're not relying on a magic mindset. They've designed their world to support their standards. They set their clothes out the night before. They prepare their meals in advance. They remove toxic apps from their phone. They schedule their tasks like appointments. They don't wait for the day to unfold. They structure it before it begins. You might think discipline is about waking up and making hard choices every day, but the truth is, disciplined people make fewer choices, not more. They eliminate unnecessary decisions so their energy is reserved for execution. Decision fatigue is real. The more choices you leave yourself, the more opportunities your emotions have to interfere. Ask yourself, how many times a day do you give yourself an out? How often do you say, maybe later, or I'll do it when I feel better, or I'll get to it after I rest? Every one of those statements is an escape route, and your brain loves escapes. The solution isn't to resist temptation, it's to eliminate its access. Imagine two versions of your morning. Version A: you wake up to your phone next to your bed, scroll for a few minutes, feel groggy, debate getting up. Tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, rush to get ready, and the day begins with chaos. Version B: your phone is across the room on airplane mode. Your alarm forces you out of bed. Your clothes are already laid out. Your water bottle is filled. Your workout plan is written. There is no decision, only movement. The difference isn't motivation, it's design. Most people leave too much room for debate. They start the day negotiating instead of executing. That's why discipline feels hard. Not because the actions are impossible, but because the gateway to those actions is crowded with choices. If you want to become disciplined, you need to remove negotiation from your environment, your schedule, and your identity. Let's break that down into 3 domains. 1. Environmental discipline. Shape your space before it shapes you. Your habits are a reflection of your environment. If your kitchen is full of junk food, eating clean becomes a fight. If your room is a mess, your thoughts will be too. If your work area is loud, cluttered, and full of distractions, you'll waste more time thinking about starting than actually starting. Ask yourself, does your space support your goals or sabotage them? Here are some examples of environmental enforcement. Don't just plan to work out. Put your equipment where you can't ignore it. Don't just say you'll sleep earlier. Remove your screens from the room at night. Don't just try to read more. Leave a book where your phone used to be. Don't keep the foods that break your diet within arm's reach and tell yourself you'll resist. Don't rely on memory. Use visual triggers, written reminders, and non-optional cues. Environment is one of the silent killers of discipline because it doesn't argue. It just influences. The fastest way to change your behavior is to change the space you live in. 2. Scheduling discipline. Time blocks over wishful thinking. If your schedule exists only in your head, your emotions will rearrange it every time resistance appears. The phrase, "I'll get to it later," is a guarantee that you won't. Later is a graveyard where goals go to die. You don't need more inspiration. You need a structured clock. Here's the difference between people who act and people who avoid. Undisciplined mindset. I'll work on it at some point today. Disciplined mindset. From 6:30 to 7:30, I do it. No debate. Time blocks remove uncertainty. Uncertainty invites procrastination. You can't treat your goals like side quests and expect main character results. Discipline is built when tasks are fixed, not floating. Create rules around your time. Mornings are for execution, not reaction. Work blocks are uninterrupted. No notifications, no scrolling, no wandering. Breaks are scheduled, not impulsive. Evenings have a cutoff. Discipline includes recovery, not burnout. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the strength of your schedule. 3. Identity discipline. Become the person who does, not tries. Most people think discipline is something you do. They don't realize it's something you become. Your habits follow your identity, and your identity follows your standards. If you keep saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined," you're subconsciously telling yourself you're not. Language matters. Your brain listens. Instead of, "I'm trying to work out," "I'm the type of person who trains regardless of mood," "I'm trying to wake up early," "I'm someone who starts before others are awake," "I'm trying to eat better," "I don't put trash into a body I respect." Identity is self-fulfilling. If you see yourself as undisciplined, you will act in alignment with that belief. If you reinforce the identity of someone who enforces standards, your actions will follow. This is why changing your environment and schedule is not enough. You must change your language, your self-talk, and your internal rules. You need to decide that quitting is not part of your character. That negotiation is not part of your routine. That comfort is not your priority. Discipline becomes easier when you stop flirting with your old identity. You cannot evolve while still identifying with your past. But let's address a deeper issue. Most people don't fail at discipline because they're incapable. They fail because they still allow escape routes. You tell yourself, if I miss today, I'll just make it up tomorrow. That is the vocabulary of someone who is still negotiating with their mediocrity. The most disciplined people in the world don't always like what they do, but they never question if they will do it. That internal debate has been eliminated. Their decisions were made long before the moment arrived. You must pre-decide your standards. You don't decide to start when it's time to act. You decide days before, mentally, and then execute when that moment arrives. That's enforcement. That's identity. That's discipline. And here's the truth. You're not missing potential. You're missing enforcement. You don't need more books, more quotes, more videos. You need to stop allowing convenience to control your trajectory. You need to start building systems that corner you into action. There will be days when you're exhausted, stressed, frustrated, emotional, overwhelmed, and discipline will not feel convenient. That's not a signal to stop. That is the exact moment where identity is upgraded. If you only keep promises when it's easy, your discipline is fake. If you only follow through when you're motivated, your progress is conditional. If you only show up when you feel good, you're not committed. You're interested. And that's the difference. Interested people act when they feel like it. Committed people act even when they don't. You must force yourself to cross the bridge from I want to change to I refuse to stay the same. Excuses are the most sophisticated form of self-sabotage because they sound rational, they feel justified, and they defend your comfort while disguising it as logic. People don't call them excuses, they call them reasons. But changing the label doesn't change the reality. Anything that delays required action is an excuse. Every time you tell yourself why you can't start, why it's not a good time, why you need to rest, why you'll try later, that's not intelligence speaking. That's fear wearing a mask. That's comfort using your own voice. The undisciplined mind is a master negotiator. It doesn't shout, it whispers. You had a long day, take it easy. You can start fresh next week. You're not in the right headspace. You don't want to burn out. You'll be more productive once you feel better. These messages don't feel destructive. They feel caring. But comfort often sounds kind while it kills your progress. Excuses don't show up as failure. They show up as postponement. And postponement is where dreams slowly bleed out. The disciplined person sees excuses for what they are, lies dressed as logic. Undisciplined people see them as truth, fairness, or self-protection. And that's the problem. You can't fix something you don't admit exists. Let's call out the most common excuses and break them open. Excuse 1. I'm too tired. Fatigue is real, but most of the time it's not physical. It's mental. You're not tired from action, you're tired from indecision. The exhaustion you feel is often the result of overthinking, procrastinating, scrolling, and avoiding tasks until they weigh down your mind. If you're truly sleep-deprived, rest with intention. But if you're just emotionally tired, action will give you more energy than avoidance ever will. The gym doesn't drain you. The internal argument about going does. Work doesn't burn you out. Dragging it across 5 hours of distraction does. You don't need more rest. You need more momentum. Excuse 2. I don't have time. This is the most overused lie in existence. You don't lack time. You lack priority. You'll binge shows for 4 hours, scroll for 2, talk in circles with people who bring no growth, replay old conversations in your head, and then say you're busy. The truth is, the time is there, but your discipline isn't. If someone offered you $10 million to build a new habit in 30 days, you'd suddenly find time. That proves time isn't the issue. Motivation and commitment are. You don't need more hours in a day. You need fewer excuses in your mouth. Excuse 3. I'm not ready yet. This is perfectionism pretending to be preparation. You think you need more information, better conditions, or a sharper plan. But readiness is not a requirement for progress. It is a result of progress. You don't become ready before you act. You become ready because you acted. You weren't ready the first time you drove a car, went to school, started a job, or faced hardship, but you adapted. The longer you wait for readiness, the further you train your brain to associate action with permission. Excuse 4. I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow is the most dangerous place in the world because nothing lives there except abandoned dreams. I'll start tomorrow is how you train your mind to believe that delay is harmless. But every time you push something to tomorrow, you teach your brain that today doesn't matter. You don't break procrastination by thinking, you break it by moving. The hardest moment is always the first 30 seconds of starting. Once momentum begins, resistance starts to die. You don't need to finish everything today. You just need to kill the excuse that stops the start. Excuse 5. I don't feel motivated. Motivation is a mood, and moods are unstable. If you only act when you feel like it, you'll live a life controlled by unpredictability. Discipline is the cure to fluctuating emotions. People who wait for motivation are amateurs. Professionals rely on commitment. Motivation might start your journey, but discipline finishes it. And if motivation doesn't show up, you show up without it. Excuse 6. I don't know where to start. This isn't confusion, it's hesitation dressed up as confusion. If I told you I'd give you $1 million to take the first step toward your goal right now, you'd figure it out instantly. That proves the problem was never lack of direction, it was lack of urgency. You don't need the whole map to take the first step. Progress creates clarity. Doing exposes direction. Waiting breeds doubt. The truth is, excuses survive when there is no consequence for using them. As long as you let yourself off the hook, you'll stay stuck. Excuses are habits, and like any habit, they can be broken, but not by dismissing them gently. They must be confronted aggressively. Start by tracking your excuses. Every time you're about to delay something important, pause and call it what it is. Don't dress it up with soft language. Don't say, I need rest, when you mean I don't feel like it. Don't say, I lost track of time, when you mean I chose distraction over discipline. Don't say, I'll get to it later, when you mean I've accepted stagnation. Harsh clarity is kinder to your future than gentle deception. That inner voice that tells you to stop, slow down, or delay isn't protecting you. It's protecting your current identity, and your current identity is made of habits that are holding you back. If you keep listening to that voice, you will live the same year over and over and call it a life. You cannot become disciplined until you become violent with your excuses. They don't get negotiated with, they get eliminated. And this is where people get uncomfortable. They want discipline without confrontation. They want change without disruption. They want transformation without accountability. But you cannot outgrow your excuses until you drag them into the light and dismantle them one by one. When you remove excuses, the truth becomes unavoidable. Either do the work or admit you don't want it badly enough. Most people will defend their excuses before they defend their goals. And that's why they stay average. Your excuses are not random, they're patterns. And every pattern can be rewired. You need to collapse the mental stories that let you off the hook. Start speaking to yourself in terms of responsibility, not justification. Replace I couldn't with I didn't. Replace I'll try with I will. Replace I was busy with I chose something else. That linguistic shift alone will expose how often you betray your own standards. Once you destroy excuses, you free up the energy that's been spent rationalizing inaction. Discipline becomes easier, not because the tasks are simpler, but because your resistance is quieter. The truth is simple. You will either build discipline or build excuses, but you won't build both. There's a moment in everyone's life when the mind tries to negotiate its way out of responsibility. It doesn't matter how ambitious you are, how powerful your goals sound, or how much you claim to want success. Your brain is wired to protect your comfort first. That means the instinct to delay, avoid, rationalize, or soften your obligations isn't a flaw in your personality. It's a default setting of the human operating system. The problem is when you don't override it. The people you call disciplined don't enjoy doing the hard thing more than you. Their bodies aren't less tired. Their brains don't magically love pain, structure, or consistency. What separates them is this: they don't open the door to negotiation. They don't ask themselves how they feel about the work. They don't wait for a spark of energy. They don't make the task optional based on mood. They decide the action is non-negotiable, and then they move before the brain has a chance to object. This is the raw truth you must swallow. Success requires you to act before comfort approves. You don't wait to think about it. You don't wait to feel aligned. You don't wait until the conditions are right. You move fast, and your emotions are forced to follow, not lead. That's what force really means in the context of discipline. It is not aggression toward the self. It is not self-hatred. It is not toxic perfection. It is the refusal to hand over your future to your fleeting emotional state. Because every time you wait to feel ready, you train your mind to believe that emotion controls your actions. And every time you take action before you feel ready, you train your mind to obey intent over impulse. This section isn't about how to feel disciplined. It's about how to act disciplined even when you don't. And that's what rewires identity. There is a dangerous myth people cling to: the idea that one day they will suddenly become the kind of person who wakes up motivated, who craves routine, who naturally gravitates toward the hard path. They think discipline is a personality trait they haven't unlocked yet, as if one morning they'll wake up craving discomfort, and until that day arrives, they'll just work on themselves internally and wait for the perfect headspace. That day, it never comes. There is no version of you arriving in the future who will love effort more than ease. There is no mental switch that flips randomly after another week of procrastination. There is only a decision: act now or remain stuck. Internal alignment is not a prerequisite for discipline, it is a consequence of it. Your mind doesn't become stronger before you take action. It becomes stronger because you take action before you feel strong. People don't meditate their way into discipline. They don't vision board their way into daily execution. They don't journal their way into consistency. They obey themselves into discipline. They force action long enough for action to become identity. There is an invisible 3-second window that determines your success more than anything else. It's the space between intention and movement. You think, I should get up now. You think, I need to start working on that. You think, I should go train, write, study, build, call, plan. In that tiny moment, your subconscious scans for escape hatches, maybe in a few minutes. Let me check my phone first. I'll start after I eat. I'm tired, I'll do it later. The thought survives only if you move immediately. If you give it time, your brain will dismantle it and replace it with comfort-preserving logic. Disciplined people don't give themselves that 3-second death window. They move before the excuses load. You don't need to feel powerful. You need to move before permission. You don't need a perfect mindset. You need to execute before the sabotage script plays. The brain doesn't resist what has already begun. It resists what you hesitate on. Most people live in self-negotiation. I worked hard yesterday, so I can take it slow today. I'm not in the right mood to give 100% right now. I'll wait until I have clarity before I start. No one will know if I skip this. This isn't the perfect time. Negotiation culture is the death of forward momentum. It teaches your mind that every action is optional, that your ambitions are suggestions, that your standards are up for debate. You cannot dominate your life while arguing with yourself. Ruthless self-command is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the quiet, firm rule. If I said I'm doing it, I'm doing it. Period. No emotional debate, no inner committee vote, no rewrites of the plan mid-action. The more you negotiate, the weaker your follow-through becomes. The more you decide without debate, the stronger your identity becomes. One path leads to mental erosion, the other leads to psychological superiority. Your brain does not respect goals, it respects consequences. When there is no price for inaction, the brain defaults to ease. But when every broken commitment has a cost, execution becomes automatic. This is why deadlines produce miracles at the last minute. This is why external accountability can outperform good intentions. This is why people perform when others are watching, but slack when alone. You must build consequences into your system so discipline doesn't rely on feelings or vibes. Try this difference. Goal: I'll go to the gym 5 days a week. Consequence-led discipline: if I don't go, I'm not allowed to eat out this week. Goal: I'll wake up at 5 a.m. Consequence-led discipline: if I snooze, I lose access to my YouTube or Netflix account for 3 days. Goal: I'll work on my project every day. Consequence-led discipline: if I skip, I send $50 to someone I can't stand. The brain understands cost, and when there's a cost to failure, discipline stops being optional. Self-respect is built when promises are enforced, not when they're spoken. Most people think dishonesty only applies to other people. But the most destructive lies are the ones told internally. I'll start tomorrow. I'll get back on track soon. I'll be more serious next time. These statements feel harmless, but every broken personal promise rewires your self-trust. Your brain stops believing your intentions. You slowly become someone who speaks goals but lives in delay. That's how identity erodes. Discipline begins when your word becomes law to yourself. If you say you're waking up early, it happens. If you say you're finishing the task today, it's done. If you say you're showing up daily, you do. Especially when it's inconvenient. No exceptions, no loopholes, no emotional bailout clauses. When your word has enforcement, your mind stops arguing. It obeys. Undisciplined living is painless in the moment and excruciating over time. Disciplined living is uncomfortable in the moment and liberating over time. Pain isn't the enemy. Drift is. You feel it when you delay something important again. When you wake up repeating the same weak patterns. When potential rots in the dark because desire never becomes force. And yet, pain is also a signal. It's a warning shot that you are betraying your future. The disciplined don't run from this signal, they use it. They convert discomfort into a trigger for action. They treat hesitation as proof that movement is necessary. They don't wait for inspiration. They use resistance as fuel. Growth isn't the absence of discomfort, it's the decision to move through it faster than you talk yourself out of it. Once you start enforcing motion before mood, something powerful happens. Resistance weakens. Not because the tasks get easier, but because your identity shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries to be disciplined and start seeing yourself as someone who doesn't tolerate personal negotiations. Momentum builds speed, but more importantly, it builds self-certainty. And certainty is what kills hesitation. When you see yourself as someone who acts no matter how you feel, your feelings stop putting up a fight. They learn their place. You don't crush doubt with journaling, you crush it with repeated execution. You don't kill procrastination with motivation, you kill it by denying it oxygen. One day you'll wake up and realize that the dreams you planned to get serious about expired years ago. That delay became decay. That time, your only non-renewable asset, was quietly drained by comfort and negotiation. That day doesn't have to come. Discipline is not built in the future. It is enforced now. The question is not, can you do it? The question is, will you force it before your feelings sabotage it? Because the person who forces action wins. The person who negotiates with comfort waits. And the world does not reward those who wait. Nobody becomes disciplined by chance. Nobody wakes up one day with unstoppable consistency. Discipline is engineered, built through systems that remove choice, eliminate friction, and force you into alignment with your standards even when your emotions lag behind. If part 1 was about mindset, force, and identity, then part 2 is about construction, building the scaffolding around your life so that discipline doesn't hinge on willpower. Because willpower leaks, motivation fades, energy fluctuates. But systems don't ask how you feel. Systems don't care if you're inspired. Systems execute the plan whether or not you're on board emotionally. The most disciplined people don't trust themselves. That's the secret. They trust their system. People think the problem is their self-control. They assume that if they were stronger mentally, they'd finally stick with what matters. But the truth is, even the most elite performers don't rely on sheer force of will every time they act. They design their life so that discipline is the default, not the heroic exception. If going to the gym requires emotional energy, travel, debate, planning, and scheduling, you'll flake. If working on your goals means setting up your environment from scratch each time, you'll delay. If tracking your progress depends on memory and motivation, you'll forget. You're not weak, your structure is. Discipline fails when there are too many points of decision, because every decision invites negotiation, and negotiation invites excuses, so you must reverse engineer your life to make the right actions frictionless, automatic, and embarrassingly easy to complete. Motivation is internal, but discipline is environmental. Your surroundings either pull you forward or pull you back. A room full of distractions equals attention decay. A workspace cluttered with useless items equals lagging momentum. A phone full of instant dopamine apps equals execution death by 1,000 taps. You don't rise to the level of intention, you fall to the level of your setup. If your environment makes undisciplined behavior easy, you're not undisciplined, you're predictable. The mind obeys what's nearby, what's accessible, what's visible, and what's rewarded. You don't need more inspiration. You need to re-architect your surroundings so they corner you into progress. Examples of enforcement through environment. Want to read daily? Put the book where your phone used to be. Want to wake up early? Put your alarm across the room and your clothes in front of the door. Want to work on your project after work? Remove streaming apps from your primary devices. Want to eat clean? Remove the junk food entirely, not reduce, not hide, not portion. Eliminate. Your environment should shame inaction and reward execution. You should feel ridiculous choosing the lazy option. Most people make their goals too heavy at the front door. That's why they don't start. They try to optimize before they act. They try to perfect the plan before they lift the first mental weight. They think, if I don't have 2 hours to train, I'll skip today. If I can't write 10 pages, I won't write at all. If I don't feel fully energized, I'll wait until tomorrow. If I can't make it ideal, I'll delay until it is. This is how people lose decades. The disciplined understand something different. The only goal is to start, not to finish perfectly. They lower the activation energy so action can begin immediately without emotional vote. They don't aim for a 2-hour workout. They start with 5 minutes of movement. They don't aim to write a book in a night. They focus on showing up for one paragraph. They don't wait for full focus. They begin before the mind can resist. Once motion begins, the brain follows. Starting is the kill shot to resistance. Most of your failure comes from the absence of starting, not the absence of talent. You don't need a surge of motivation. You need a structure that assumes you will eventually fall off and prepares for that fall before it happens. Disciplined people don't stay disciplined because they never slip. They stay disciplined because they design their recovery in advance. They create reset points, predefined, automatic re-entry triggers that pull them back into action the moment they drift. Most people fail once and stay gone. They mess up a routine and say, I'll restart next week. I broke the streak, so I'll take a break. I'll get back once I feel ready again. But the disciplined treat failure differently. They don't let one broken day turn into a broken month. They don't need to feel recommitted to return. Their reset plan executes without emotion. Examples: missed your morning routine, your fallback time is preset for the afternoon. Broke your diet at lunch. Dinner is automatically back on track. No guilt spiral allowed. Skipped a workout. You already have a pre-scheduled makeup session baked into the week. Fell into a distraction window. You have a timer system that forces the exit. The difference is not perfection, it's immediacy of return. If you don't build resets, you build regret. People assume discipline is about effort. In reality, it's about automation. The brain conserves effort wherever possible, so you must turn decisions into defaults. A disciplined person isn't making 20 strong choices a day. They made one strong choice once, then designed the environment, schedule, reminders, or external commitments to enforce it automatically. Some systems of automation. Time blocking. So the day obeys a structure, not impulse. Non-negotiable start times. Not goals, not preferences, but appointments you either honor or break. Daily rituals, micro-actions that cue the brain into the next move. Music, clothes, lighting, workspace setup. Habit stacking, linking the new task to an existing routine so you don't rely on memory. Digital restriction, blocking apps, disabling notifications, removing dopamine bait from easy reach. Progress tracking in sight, not in your mind, but physically visible so the mind is confronted with momentum or the lack of it. When something is automated, it stops requiring emotional debate. And once something stops requiring emotional debate, consistency is no longer heroic. It's normal. Self-discipline is the goal, but external pressure can be the bridge that gets you there. You don't have to rely on willpower if you create conditions that punish slack and reward follow-through. Accountability is often misunderstood as weakness. In reality, it's leverage. A training partner makes skipping embarrassing. A public commitment makes quitting shameful. A coach makes excuses expensive. A deadline makes procrastination painful. When your reputation, money, or word is at stake, your brain stops looking for the exit. You must put skin in the game, because discomfort in advance prevents regret later. A self-imposed rule backed by no consequence is a fantasy, not a standard. Most people try to feel like a disciplined person before they act like one. They want their psychology to change first. But identity isn't built through belief. It's built through enforced repetition. You don't become disciplined by wanting it. You become disciplined by refusing to break the structure that forces it. Once your system is stronger than your mood, you become dangerous. You don't wake up wondering if you'll show up. You've already shown up in your design. You don't negotiate with inner resistance. It doesn't get a seat at the table anymore. You don't wait for power. You move in a way that creates it on demand. There's a reason why so many people start strong and then collapse. It's not because they're weak, lazy, or doomed to fail. It's because they've built their lives on willpower instead of systems. Willpower is like a battery. It drains. It fluctuates. Some days it's full, other days it's dead before noon. And if your success depends entirely on how much willpower you can summon on a given day, you've already lost. Because discipline isn't about fighting harder in the moment. It's about designing your environment so that the fight is already won before it begins. Think of it like this. If you're trying to eat healthy, but your kitchen is full of junk food, you're fighting temptation every time you open the fridge. If you're trying to wake up earlier, but your phone is on your nightstand, glowing with notifications, you're battling distraction before your day even starts. If you're trying to build a new skill, but your workspace is cluttered and chaotic, you're leaking focus before you even sit down. The disciplined don't trust themselves to win every internal battle. They design their world so the battles never happen. This is the difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs think discipline is about brute forcing your way through resistance. Professionals engineer discipline so resistance doesn't even show up at the door. Why systems beat willpower every time? Let's break this down scientifically. Your brain is lazy, on purpose. It loves efficiency. It wants shortcuts, defaults, and autopilot behavior. That's not weakness, that's survival. The problem is, if you don't control what your autopilot does, it will default to the easiest, most comfortable path available. This means your environment isn't neutral, it's always pulling you in one direction, either toward your goals or away from them. If success requires you to resist temptation every single time, your system is broken. A real system removes temptation instead of relying on superhuman resistance. For example, want to save money? Automate transfers to a savings account before you even see the cash. Want to stop scrolling late at night? Leave your phone charging in another room. Want to eat clean? Remove processed food from your home completely. Want to work deeply? Block social media sites for 8 hours a day. Notice something here. None of these examples require trying harder. They require system design. Discipline is not about strength. It's about structure. The undisciplined person wakes up and asks, "Do I feel like doing this today?" The disciplined person wakes up inside a structure that makes the decision for them. Imagine 2 different mornings. Person A keeps their phone beside their bed. The alarm goes off. They snooze. Notifications flash. They scroll. They waste an hour before even standing up. Person B keeps their phone across the room. Their alarm forces them out of bed. Their workout clothes are already laid out. Their water bottle is ready. Their environment makes the first 10 minutes frictionless. Who's more likely to win the morning? Not the one with more motivation, the one with fewer decisions. Discipline is not about how much strength you can summon. It's about how little strength you need to summon. Friction and flow, your two secret weapons. Two forces run your habits, friction and flow. Friction is how hard it feels to start something. Flow is how easy it feels to keep going once you start. If you want to destroy a bad habit, increase friction. Make it harder to do. If you want to build a good habit, increase flow. Make it easier to do. If you want to stop eating junk food, don't buy it. If you want to eat better, meal prep in advance, so healthy food is the easiest option. If you want to stop overspending, delete shopping apps. If you want to save, automate it. If you want to stop wasting time online, log out every day. If you want to learn, keep your book or course ready and one click away. The disciplined don't fight urges, they make urges inconvenient. Identity engineering through systems. Here's the secret most people miss. Systems don't just shape behavior, they shape identity. If every day you wake up, move across the room to shut off your alarm, drink water, put on your running shoes and walk outside, you begin to see yourself as a runner. If every week you see money automatically flow into savings without thinking about it, you start seeing yourself as financially disciplined. If every day your workspace is clean, your notifications are blocked, and your writing app is the first thing you see, you start seeing yourself as a focused creator. Identity is not built from what you say. It's built from what your systems prove. Stop trying harder. Start designing smarter. You've been told discipline is about inner strength, grit, and mental toughness. That's only half true. The other half is much simpler. Remove the need to constantly fight. Ask yourself, what are the 5 battles I fight every day? Waking up on time, eating the right food, starting the work without delay, resisting distractions, sticking to the schedule. Now ask, how can I eliminate the battle completely? Put the alarm out of reach. Don't buy junk food. Start with 2 minutes of work instead of waiting for motivation. Block distractions by default. Lock your schedule into non-negotiable time blocks. The less you fight, the more you win. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about discipline is thinking they need to feel good to take action. They wait for clarity, confidence, energy, motivation, or excitement before they move. They assume emotions must cooperate before execution begins. That belief alone destroys more potential than failure ever could. Human beings are emotional creatures. Feelings fluctuate by the hour. You're energized at 9 a.m. and doubtful by noon. Confident on Monday and drained by Wednesday. Inspired at night and indifferent in the morning. If your output depends on emotional alignment, you'll always be inconsistent. That's why emotional neutrality is one of the most powerful principles in real discipline. Emotional neutrality doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It doesn't mean pretending you're a robot. It means your actions are not up for discussion with your emotions. You don't need to feel like doing it. You don't need to want to do it. You don't need to be in the right mood to start. You simply do it because it's required. People misunderstand high performers. They think elite athletes, CEOs, top creators, and disciplined people have some special emotional stability that makes it easier for them to act. They don't. They've simply mastered the ability to act in a neutral mindset, where feelings are background noise, not decision makers. The hidden cost of emotional permission. Every time you wait to feel ready, you train your brain to delay. You teach your nervous system that emotions are superiors and logic is a suggestion. You reinforce a mental hierarchy where comfort is the leader and execution is the servant. Here's what that looks like in real time. You plan to work out at 6 a.m. You wake up tired. Your brain says, "Not today." You obey. You tell yourself you'll start a business. The day comes. You feel uncertain. You delay. You promise to write daily. You sit down uninspired. You say, "I'll come back when I'm in the zone." You don't. You vow to study or train after work. You feel mentally drained. You push it to tomorrow. Each time this happens, your brain learns feelings, commitments. Before long, action becomes optional, and goals become fantasies. Emotion is a weather pattern. Action is architecture. Imagine your emotions like weather. Some days are sunny, some days are grey. Some days there's fog, wind, or storms. Now imagine your goals are a building you're constructing brick by brick. Would you ever say, "It's cloudy today, I can't lay bricks"? Of course not. The building doesn't care about the sky. Progress doesn't negotiate with weather. Emotion is weather. Discipline is construction. You build regardless of the forecast. People who only act when they feel inspired are hobbyists. People who act no matter what they feel are architects. Your feelings are not instructions. They are indicators. Emotion has a place, but not at the steering wheel. Feelings alert you, but they should not direct you. Fatigue signals the need for rest, but not the cancellation of effort. Fear signals risk, but not paralysis. Doubt signals uncertainty, but not surrender. Resistance signals a challenge, but not retreat. The disciplined don't ignore their emotions, but they assign them the right rank. Feedback, not commands. Neutral action, the habit of not caring how you feel. Here's a principle that will change your life. Act the same on bad days as you do on good days. When you remove emotional permission from your actions, something incredible happens. You become consistent. And consistency builds evidence. And evidence builds identity. And identity makes execution automatic. That quiet, emotionless execution is what most people are missing. Call it what it is. You don't need rest. You need to move. You're not burned out. You're undisciplined with boundaries. You're not uninspired. You're waiting for a mood instead of building a habit. Neutrality is the superpower. It feels boring. It feels unromantic. But it produces the one thing motivation never will. Certainty, self-respect comes from non-emotional follow-through. Every time you act, despite feeling resistance, you send a message to yourself, "I am in charge." Every time you surrender to emotion, the message flips, "I am controlled." Self-respect isn't built through journaling, affirmations, or feel-good quotes. It's built through emotionally neutral execution. You don't need to hype yourself up. You don't need to visualize success. You don't need the stars to align. You need to move when your mind tries to stall. Your future does not care how you feel today. Your vision does not pause when you're uncomfortable. Your standards do not wait for ideal conditions. You either act or you don't. Everything else is noise. The 5-second override, you don't need to win the whole day. You only need to win the first 5 seconds. The moment hesitation appears, act, stand up, move, open the file, start the timer. Begin the rep, take the step. Emotion is loudest before you start. Once motion begins, the emotional volume drops. The difference between an undisciplined person and a disciplined one is not desire. It's response time. The disciplined act before doubt gives its full speech. You don't need bravery, you need fewer seconds of hesitation. Emotional independence is the path to mental freedom. When you stop waiting to feel right before acting, a new kind of peace forms in your mind. You're no longer negotiating with yourself every hour. You're no longer spending energy debating execution. You don't ride emotional highs or crash on emotional lows. You become stable, predictable, dangerous, in the best way. Your work gets done whether you're tired or energized. Your habits stick whether you're excited or bored. Your goals progress whether you feel confident or uncertain. That's power. That's freedom. That's discipline without friction. You don't need to eliminate emotion. You need to demote it. The point isn't to numb yourself. The point is to build a hierarchy where emotion trails intention, not the other way around. You acknowledge how you feel. You name it. But you don't consult it before moving. Emotion can ride, but it doesn't drive. Missing this single rule is why most people never get consistent enough to see transformation. They're waiting to feel like the person they want to become instead of acting like them. Emotionally neutral action creates the version of you that motivation keeps promising. Accountability without excuses. How to trap yourself into winning. Most people believe they're held back by a lack of motivation, time, clarity, or resources. But the real reason they don't follow through is simpler. There are no consequences for failing themselves. When you tell yourself you'll wake up early, but no one is there to enforce it, you sleep in. When you say you'll work on your goals after work, but nothing happens if you don't, you push it to tomorrow. When you promise to stop a bad habit, but breaking that promise costs you nothing, you repeat it effortlessly. The truth is harsh. People don't rise to their ambitions, they fall to their accountability structure. If failure is free, you'll afford it often. The undisciplined rarely lack desire, they lack stakes. Comfort is cheap when quitting has no price. Think about how most people operate. Their inner dialogue sounds like this: I'll start again next week. I'll skip today, it's not a big deal. I'll be serious when I'm in the right headspace. I just need to get through this month first. I'll fix my habits when things calm down. They talk as if time resets itself on command, as if the future is guaranteed, as if delaying the work today doesn't shape who they become tomorrow. But there's a deeper, more dangerous truth under it. They behave this way because nothing punishes the pause. No financial cost, no social cost, no identity cost, no structural disruption, so the easiest path becomes the only path. Here's something high performers understand deeply. When you're the only one who knows your goals, you're also the only one who can excuse your failure. That's why they engineer accountability, even when they don't need it. They create pressure on purpose. Not because they're weak, but because they're human. Most people think accountability is for beginners. They think once you're serious enough, you can be trusted to stay on track alone, that thinking is arrogant and wrong. The disciplined design their world of success is the default, and quitting is embarrassing, costly, or both. Imagine two scenarios. Scenario 1, you tell yourself privately, I'll go to the gym 5 days a week. Skip. No one knows. No one cares. The world moves on. Scenario 2, you pay a trainer in advance. Your friend meets you there. You told 3 people you'd lose 10 pounds. You post your check-ins publicly. Skip. You answer for it. Who sticks to the plan? Not the one with more passion, the one with more exposure. Accountability isn't weakness, it's leverage. The power of trapped commitment. One of the most effective strategies for discipline is what I call the trap method. You corner yourself into consistency by removing the escape door. You use pressure in your favor. Here's how trapping yourself looks in real life. Financial traps pay in advance. Buy the course before you're ready. Enroll in the class, sign the contract, invest in coaching. The pain of wasting money drives action. Social traps: tell someone you respect. Announce your deadline, share your weekly progress publicly. Don't hide behind silence, make your effort visible. Structural traps: arrange your schedule so your obligations collide with your goals. Book the studio, set the meeting, block the time. When the world expects you, you move. Reputation traps: attach your identity to the standard. Say out loud, I don't miss workouts. I write every day. I don't break my word. Once your character is on the line, quitting isn't an option. It's humiliation. Traps don't limit freedom. They protect the future from your weaker impulses. Self-respect is built in the shadow of consequence. There's a reason you don't show up late to your job as often as you miss your personal goals. There's a reason you meet deadlines for other people but delay your own for months or years. There's a reason you wouldn't miss a scheduled flight, but you'll skip the work that would change your life. Simple. One has consequences, the other doesn't. Discipline without accountability is a fantasy. You cannot expect yourself to uphold a standard that costs nothing to violate. Your brain doesn't believe in your goals, it believes in what you enforce. If you're tired of quitting, create a world where quitting is expensive. Expose your commitments to friction. People think willpower is the answer, but often what they really need is fewer exits. You don't need to be stronger, you need to be cornered. Ask yourself, what would make skipping this painful? How can I make backing out humiliating? Who needs to know so I can't disappear? What money can I put on the line to stay committed? What rule can I set that punishes failure instantly? Most people aren't unmotivated, they're unaccountable. The psychology of being seen. There is a reason soldiers don't skip training. There's a reason team athletes don't flake on practice. There's a reason people perform better when someone's in the room. Humans perform differently when observed. Being witnessed confirms identity. Being answerable prevents drift. Being visible eliminates excuses. Private goals die quietly. Public ones demand oxygen. You don't need the world watching. You need the right eyes, the right stakes, and the right trap. Accountability is a discipline multiplier. When you fuse systems, structure, and consequence, discipline ceases to be emotional. It becomes mechanical. You don't hope you'll follow through. You're cornered into follow-through. Quitting becomes awkward. Skipping becomes loud. Staying small becomes embarrassing. When you trap yourself correctly, two things happen. Your effort compounds. Your identity evolves to match your actions. You stop acting like someone chasing discipline and start behaving like someone who simply does not tolerate self-abandonment. And over time, that becomes who you are. Think about how many times you've waited for the perfect time to start. You tell yourself you'll begin when life calms down, when your schedule opens up, when motivation returns, or when you finally feel ready. But discipline doesn't wait for ideal conditions. Discipline creates the conditions. Successful people don't start because things are convenient. They start and then things become aligned. They don't wait for certainty. They commit until clarity appears. Here's the truth most people avoid. Procrastination isn't a time issue. It's an identity issue. You don't delay because you're lazy. You delay because you haven't fully accepted that you are the kind of person who does hard things even when you don't feel like it. And the irony? Most of your suffering doesn't come from doing the work. It comes from resisting the work. Once you start, the resistance evaporates. Discipline is about identity enforcement. Every action you take either reinforces or erases the identity you claim to build. When you say, "I want to be fit," but skip your workout, your brain records that. When you say, "I'm serious about my business," but scroll on your phone for hours, your subconscious notices. Your actions are evidence, either for or against your transformation. You don't need to wait for confidence. Discipline builds confidence. Confidence is remembering the promises you kept to yourself. Discipline is putting your future self before your current mood. And when you do that consistently, self-respect becomes natural. Let's talk about emotional resistance. You think discipline is blocked by laziness, but it's actually blocked by emotional discomfort. When you skip the gym, what you're really avoiding isn't the workout. It's the feeling of inconvenience, discomfort, fatigue, or lack of excitement. When you put off your project, it's not the work that scares you. It's the fear of failure, judgment, or imperfection. Once you understand that you're not resisting the task, you're resisting a feeling, you can override it. Action dissolves emotional noise. When you move first, your feelings adjust to follow your behavior. Most people do it backward. They wait until they feel courageous, energized, inspired, focused, and then wonder why nothing changes. Delay feeds weakness. Action feeds strength. Your brain doesn't need another motivational quote, it needs evidence of execution. Evidence builds momentum, and momentum builds belief. Here's a hard rule you should carve into your mindset. If it takes less than 5 minutes, do it immediately. If it takes more than 5 minutes, start the first step. You don't have to finish everything at once, you just have to begin. Once you're in motion, your brain adapts. And let's address another lie people tell themselves. I'll be more disciplined when I have more time. No, you'll have more time when you become disciplined. Undisciplined days steal your future. You think you're escaping effort, but you're compounding consequences. Living without discipline doesn't keep you comfortable. It keeps you trapped in cycles of regret, anxiety, and stagnation. Meanwhile, disciplined action creates mental peace. You don't lie awake at night stressing over undone tasks from a place of discipline. You sleep with a quiet mind because your effort already voted in your favor. You must stop negotiating with your excuses. When the alarm rings, don't debate it. When it's time to work, don't rationalize. When your goals call, don't send them to voicemail. High performers remove the option to bargain with weakness. Force yourself means exactly that, because most days your feelings won't guide you toward greatness. Your feelings want comfort. Your future demands conflict. Discipline is choosing your future over your feelings, over and over again, until your feelings finally align. But discipline doesn't have to feel violent. It can be quiet, consistent, and structured. A soldier doesn't panic every morning. He follows his training. An athlete doesn't need hype to perform. She follows her schedule. Their identity makes space for action without drama. Remember this, structure is freedom. People think discipline is restrictive, but what's more restrictive? Waking up early to chase your goals, or waking up at 40, regretting the decade you wasted? What's more painful? Working when it's hard, or watching others live the life you were meant to build? Every day, you choose your pain, the pain of effort or the pain of regret. One lasts hours, the other lasts years. And you don't need to overhaul your entire life in a week. You need to transform how you respond in the smallest moments. Your life doesn't change when you make a grand declaration. It changes when you stop hitting snooze, stop delaying your priorities, stop abandoning your commitments when they get inconvenient. Your brain learns from repetition. If you force yourself to act today, tomorrow becomes easier. If you let yourself slip today, tomorrow becomes weaker. You're either training your mind to obey your goals or to obey your impulses. Make discipline your default. Not through perfection, but through non-negotiable consistency. There will be days you don't want to try, but you must. There will be moments your energy drops, but you move anyway. There will be times discomfort rises, and you walk into it, not away from it. Because discipline isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it's not flashy. It's the quiet decision made daily when no one is watching. It's the effort no one claps for. It's the hours you invest when results haven't arrived yet. It's the sacrifice you make before confidence shows up to applaud you. One day, people will call you driven, focused, disciplined, unshakable. They'll say you're lucky. They'll say you changed. They won't see that your transformation wasn't one giant leap. It was thousands of small moments where you forced yourself to act when it was easier to fall back. And in those moments, you made the choice most people avoid. You became stronger than your excuses. That is the essence of forcing yourself to be disciplined. Not someday, not eventually, not when life is easier, but now.